studio. In this video, I'm going to be deconstructing a few songs by the American musician Washed Out. Now, this video was inspired by a viewer named Ryan Brown who commented on my deconstruction of DJ Shadow's song Changeling. There was a connection between that song and a Washed Out song called Zonked. And that connection was the Chaffey College Jazz Ensemble track Imagination Flight. As far as I could tell online, this was the first documentation of that sample connection being made, which is pretty cool, and I really appreciate that comment, Ryan. Thanks for that. And I will get into that song later and how he sampled it. But first off, we're going to talk about Washed Out's track, Feel It All Around, from his 2009 EP, Life of Leisure. Now, the main beat in that track is sampled from the Italian musician Gary Lowe and his track I Want You from his 1983 album I Want You. Now, if you ever want to check out any of these tracks in their entirety, they'll all be linked below in the video description. So let's go ahead and sample this track and talk about how Washed Out created that lo-fi, chill wave kind of sound. First of all, you can hear that his track is obviously slowed down compared to Gary Lowe's. Now, like a lot of these things, the sampling part is not too complicated. You need to find the BPM of the original song, Washed Out, which we're going to be trying to mimic. And so that BPM here is 86. Like we always do, we're going to bump up to the beginning of the phrase. And then we're going to detune this and make sure that we're detuning it in a way that it slows it down. In Ableton Live, that means that it's on repitch or that it's not being warped. What we're going to do is we're going to throw it down a couple semitones. No, let's try 3. Maybe 4. One more. Let's go down to -6. Let's compare that to his. Now, one thing I noticed that is it's not quite matching up. He probably detuned it a little bit more to actually make it match up. So I'm going to do that as well. So it's -6 semitones and then minus another 14%. So let's try that out. See if we can hear a difference. Okay, so we're pretty much right on, but it doesn't quite sound right. So let's talk about how Washed Out got this sound. Now, there are many different ways that you can go about doing this, from reamping to using different compressors and different limiters and things. But this is the way that I've gone about it, and I think I've gotten fairly close. So I started with an EQ. There's not very much deep low end in this sound. What I've done is I've rolled off from around 100 to around 80 hertz, and I've dropped 5 dB around 200 hertz. And then very importantly for this sound, you also want to roll off the high end. Here's with the EQ off. Now we need to really compress this signal and hopefully add some distortion to it as well to give it that kind of chill wave sound. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to limit it first. And by doing that, I'm really flattening the signal and making it very loud. And so after that, I'm going to throw on a compressor. This is Ableton's built-in compressor, and I've got the ratio quite high. I've got it acting in peak mode, which makes it very sensitive to kind of short peaks in the signal, which allows it to kind of distort a little bit when the release is low. And so I've got the attack low, the release low, high threshold, and ratio. And so if you put this all together, you should end up with a flattened sound. And we'll compare that to his. And back to mine. And now let's take off these effects quick so we can hear the AB. We'll put the effects back on. Now, one thing that's missing here, he overlaid most of this track with a vocal sample that he sings in this track. So that's not what you're hearing here, because I can't recreate that. So let's go ahead and move on to another washed out track called Olivia from his 2009 album, High Times. Now, I really love that track. I love its energy. I love the rhythm. I love the keyboards. And they're sampled from the Greek musician Costas, Charitodiplomenos, and his 1984 track, Lost in the Night, from the album Do It. Let's take a listen to that now. In my opinion, that is a really solid track. Now, let's go ahead and sample it and see what we can find here. Let's compare it to Washed Out's Olivia. So there's not really much pitch shifting going on. Maybe a little bit. It sounds a little bit... So I've gone ahead and sampled this, and I had to pull things up by about 36% of a semitone in order to match Washed Out's. And then I put the same treatment on this track that I did for Feel It All Around. So let's do a quick comparison without those effects on, the limiter and the compressor and the EQ. So without effects. Let's compare that to his. He made these two songs, Feel It All Around and Olivia, around the same time, so he would have used a similar method to make that sound. So there's not too much else to deconstruct with the sample here. So let's move on to the Washed Out track that shares a sample with DJ Shadow and see what he did there. Now this track is called Zonked, and it's from his 2017 album, Mr. Mellow.
That's according to a recent survey conducted by the country's leading nonprofit mental health organization, or Mental Health Association.
I was exhausted, and I didn't realize it, like, physically, because it wasn't physical. It was definitely 100% emotional, and just in my head, I just felt tired.
So the main sample that Washed Out used there is the Chaffey College Jazz Ensemble and their 1978 track Imagination Flight. So as I mentioned before, as pointed out by one of my viewers, this track, Imagination Flight, was sampled by DJ Shadow for his track Changeling from his 1996 album Introducing. And let's take a quick listen to that. You can hear that they both use different parts of the song. DJ Shadow uses the intro keyboard. And Washed Out uses the bass break that comes in at around the 18-second mark. Let's take a listen to that. So I will say it's not too complicated of a sample, again, where you're just taking that one bar and you're going to loop it to make this track. So I've gone ahead and done that here in the orange. And there's really not much else to it. He does some pitch shifting here. Where he goes up a few semitones and then down to -2. But that's it.
America is stressed. That's according to a recent survey conducted by the country's leading nonprofit mental health.
So that concludes my look at a few of Washed Out's tracks. If you like this kind of content, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a comment, or subscribing to the channel. I'm going to continue to make these videos as time goes on, so keep an eye out for them. And with that being said, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.